All right. Welcome back to First and Short. Today is Sunday, August 24th. Week 0 just wrapped up. And this is First and Short, like I said, your first place to get short bits of football news and analysis. Today, we do have a great agenda, but I do want to start off by saying, listen, you guys have been watching. We have a lot of subscribers growing, but a lot of people don't subscribe just yet. So please just hit that subscribe button, like our videos. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. If you could follow us on the other platforms as well, that would be a huge help. If you want to listen to us while you're at work or while you're headed to work or in the gym, that would be a huge help. Like I said, I'm Mashfik.
And my name is Aaron.
That is Aaron. And today we are going to cover Week 0 reaction, what we saw, what we didn't like, what we liked, biggest winners and losers from this weekend. We want to do a deeper dive into our preview of Texas at Ohio State and also give our predictions. And there was some news about the SEC and how they're going to be handling their scheduling moving forward. I think that's very pertinent to the college football audience. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Week 0, there were a few good games. There were a few boring games. And I think the first one was pretty boring for the most part. The Aer Lingus College Football Classic. I guess that's something we got to get used to now.
What
The
a
first
name.
half, right, Air. Hey, that's their language. I'm not gonna clown it. But
Yep.
it was boring for most of the game. The first half, I think it was like 10-10 or something like that. But it did get interesting. Did get exciting near the end. Game ended Cyclones 24, Wildcats 21. Aaron, I think we both predicted the Wildcats to win this one. So I guess Iowa State kind of showed us. It sounds very close though, 24-21. But actually, Iowa State, they were doing QB kneels on the 1 yard line. They definitely could have scored again if they wanted to, if they needed to. It takes a lot of sportsmanship to not score from that close. Honestly, if I'm on the 1 yard line, I'm going for it. But listen, that's why they are where they are, and that's why I am in my bedroom. Iowa Iowa State was basically living. The Iowa State defense was basically living in the backfield. I think that's what was kind of the difference maker in this game. They sacked Avery Johnson 4 times. He had decent stats. He had 2 touchdowns, but all the fumbles and sacks just went the Cyclones' way today. Aaron, you and I both watched the game here and there. What was Iowa State doing so well on offense that Kansas State was having so much trouble stopping, especially in the second half?
Sure. So yeah, one thing that I definitely saw, in the second half when teams were getting more comfortable, I think they were taking more riskier shots, getting the ball downfield more. It happened to work a lot better in Iowa State's favor, in my opinion. That's just the way the game turned out towards the end of the game. One thing that we definitely didn't, have eyes for previewing this game was Rocco Beck. We focused on the wrong quarterback when we first covered this game last week.
Yeah.
He was the guy who came out strong, threw 2 touchdowns and really made some key plays at the end of the game. Yep. Some of my takes, some of the things that I saw, the first half was exactly what I expected it to be in week 0. It was,
Yeah.
full of sloppiness, and a lot of first game jitters. There were, I believe, 4 fumbles lost
Yeah.
for the total game, within the first half. There was a muffed punt. There was a fumble, I believe, within the 10-yard line by Iowa State. So, just a lot of chaos going on. And that tends to happen with teams in week 1 or the first game, trying to figure out who you are, what's your identity, I was glad to see teams getting more comfortable in the second half. So even though Iowa State won, one thing to point out, Kansas State did get a lot more comfortable in the second half as well. We saw Avery
Yeah.
Johnson, using his legs a lot, but also, he had 273 passing yards and 2 touchdowns himself. One thing that I recognize from that is, kind of what I envisioned the Big 12 of being anyway. The Big 12 is a very high scoring league with little to no
Yeah.
defense. That's just my opinion on it, but that's kind of what makes it exciting from time to time. When teams get out there, they get comfortable and they score.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you mentioned jitters. There's another J word, jet lag. That's probably was affecting a lot of the a lot of the game players as well. For me,
Mhm.
the play of the game, right at the end, honestly, that fourth and third conversion that set up the QB kneels on the 1 yard line that I mentioned before. That was a gutsy call. I personally thought that they were going to go for the field goal. Obviously, the risk in that was there was some time left. Kansas State could have gone for a touchdown, in that 1 or 2 minutes that was left and win. But Man Campbell said, no, we're going to win it right here. And I think that bought a lot of buy-in from the players to trust their coach. And that was definitely exciting to see. The next game, Iowa State. We'll talk about the winner here. They got a boring game against South Dakota, but then a game against Iowa. So a Big 12, Big 10 matchup. And Kirk Herbstreit, the voice of college football, he mentioned earlier this week. Iowa is the team to watch as a sleeper for the Big 10. So maybe that'll show us what Iowa State is really made of. Another Big 12 game this weekend was Fresno State at Kansas. This
Mhm.
to me was a much more fun game to watch, and maybe that was just because the Jayhawks were completely manhandling the Bulldogs. Um, they won the game 31-7, and this was Kansas's first game back in their new stadium.
Mhm.
Apparently, well, they were playing at Arrowhead. They were playing at soccer stadiums across the state, so I'm sure their fans were really juiced to be back at a new uh, up to date stadium. I like to look a lot of times when I look at games where I don't know too much of the personnel. I like to look at the rushing stats to
Yep.
tell me which team was kind of more dominant physically over the
Mhm.
other. And today, the statistics really confirmed it confirmed what the score showed. Kansas had 5 yards per carry, whereas Fresno State had a small 1.3 yards per carry. And so I think that kind of, tells that tale where Kansas was definitely just the bigger bodies, the faster bodies. Some of the key players that I really enjoyed watching, Jalen Daniels. He's probably as about old as we are. It's his sixth year as a quarterback at Kansas.
Wow.
Jalen Daniels to Cam Pickett. He's a new wide receiver at Kansas. That
Mhm.
connection was really fun to watch. I think that'll be one of his go-to weapons for Daniels moving forward. And then the Kansas defense was also causing a lot of issues. They had 3 turnovers that they were able to capitalize on, so that was fun to watch. Like I said, they play against an SEC opponent. They're in a couple weeks, Missouri, and then they'll play my dark horse team, Texas Tech, in a few weeks after that. So hopefully they'll keep up the same energy moving forward. Like I said, that was a real fun game to watch.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Didn't they just receive a big donation?
Yeah,
Like,
Booth, James Booth, I think is the name. That's who the stadium is named after. I
okay.
looked up, I looked this guy up. Some executive at some capital firm, something. Who knows what this guy did? But clearly, he's a big fan.
Yeah.
Gold,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly. Do you think he can make some impacts to the team to where they're potentially a competitor in the years to come?
Yeah. I mean, Kansas isn't like a hotbed of talent, of high school talent. Um,
Mhm.
but hey, like build the infrastructure, and not just like physical infrastructure, NIL infrastructure. I mean,
Yeah.
players will come. You build those things up, and players will want to come play for you. And Kansas, I mean, you can sell Kansas as, look, we're right in the middle of the country. Wherever you want to go, like you want to go to New York, you want to go to Florida, you want to go XYZ, we're right in the middle. It's the easiest place for you to travel from. I don't know. James Booth, if you're listening to this podcast, which I'm sure you are, you can get some ideas from us.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I mean, like you said, Kansas, they dominated. They were a big winner this weekend. But let's talk a little bit about, who the biggest winners and losers of the weekend were.
Yeah,
So, first things first, my biggest winner of the weekend, I'm gonna have to jump back and go to Iowa State, Kansas State was favored as a co-favorite to win the conference this year. And
yeah.
they came out and they shut up that narrative game one.
Hmm.
And so I think them being able to write their name in as one of the new favorites to win the conference and get out some of their first game jitters on a conference opponent, somebody that you know is going to bring steady and good competition. I feel like that was, just n- nonetheless an easy win for them this weekend through and
Mhm.
through. On the latter end, right? So my biggest loser, I'm actually going to go to the FCS level. There was
Okay.
a
Oh.
battle between UC Davis and Mercer, right? So this game was taking place as the FCS kickoff game in
Mhm.
Montgomery, Alabama. UC Davis was leading against Mercer in the fourth quarter, 23-17. There was roughly, a little over 7 minutes left in the game, and then a weather delay came. The weather was just getting worse and worse, did not stop through the night. They ended up calling the game and ruled it a no contest.
Hmm.
So UC Davis with the lead is not going to get that win, and all the statistics recorded in that game are canceled. So
Ah,
yeah,
that's tough.
that is very
Man,
tough.
man. And what a deep pull. FCS, huh? Nice.
Yeah,
I like
very.
it. Yeah, that does suck. Rain, I mean, yeah, there's 7 minutes left, and then I mean, I don't know if it works in the NIL or in the college level with the NIL, but like in the NFL, everyone they have like incentives to reach certain KPIs, right? Like do they
Exactly.
have certain incentives and now they're basically nixed. That's unfortunate. Yeah, that's a good loser for the weekend for sure. I have a couple different biggest winners and losers. For me, my biggest winner was Dan Mullen at UNLV. As we all know, he was the head coach at Mississippi State and then at Florida. He stepped away from coaching for a bit. He tried out the sports broadcasting kind of world. Not sure if he liked it or not. I personally liked him on TV. I always think that offensive coaches do a good job of like explaining X's and O's on television. Um, but clearly he was willing to start from the ground up again at UNLV. And so, not the biggest program in the world, but he was able to win. And I think that's pretty cool for him.
Yep.
The biggest loser, in my opinion, I didn't watch the entire game. I watched most of the highlights, but for me, the biggest loser was Stanford. Um, they had to fly so far just to lose by a walk-off kick. And that just has to hurt. And then looking forward when their ACC, as in Atlantic Coastal Conference schedule kicks in. By the way, they're on the Pacific Coast. I don't know if there's a team that has to fly as much more that has to fly more than them. So, if they can't beat Hawaii, how many more teams are they just going to have to fly out to and then lose? Um,
Mm,
so that actually had me interested. Like, what team is like all these conferences are changing. There's no geographical kind of standard anymore. What team
right.
is going to fly the most? Um, this isn't our trivia question of the day or anything, but Aaron, do you have an idea of who you think flies the most per year?
Per year.
Yeah. Well,
So you mentioned, one of the ACC teams that's, all the way on the other side of the country. And then
yeah.
you also have Cal, right? I think Cal just joined the ACC last year. That's another big one. And then I'm thinking about, the Big Ten. So you got like Oregon. I think is Oregon State in there? I'm not sure if they're in there this year or
No,
not.
Oregon State is still Pac-2 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, well, I kind of gave it away so it's every year. It's Hawaii. They
Hmm.
travel over 30,000 miles, which makes
Wow.
sense. Half their games are going to be on the mainland. And
Uh-huh.
number 2 is actually Stanford. So I was almost there. So Hawaii travels 30,000 miles. Stanford travels 23,000 miles this year. Oregon, Washington State, and Cal will travel around 16K. And I think that with all this conference realignment, some of this stuff is going to start to add up in terms of like who's going to be winning and losing
Sure.
because Oregon and Illinois are in the same conference. Oregon will have to travel 16,000 miles. Illinois will only travel 3,000 miles the entire season. That jet
Wow.
lag, that kind of external pressure that it puts on the players and the program and all your logistics, it's going to start to add up. There's no way it doesn't.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, anyway, my biggest loser this weekend and probably moving forward is Stanford.
Mm. Very, very interesting take. Yeah. And it's funny how, like you said, traveling, it's a factor we never really consider when evaluating a team. But I mean, hey, you
Mm,
see it in those kickoff games to where an East Coast team has to go play,
yeah.
you
Yep.
know, somebody in California at 8 or 9 p.m. their time, and it's really midnight our time,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Even,
it's
yeah, even during like the college football playoffs, everybody would be talking about, oh, okay, if Texas has to fly to the Rose Bowl, but they're playing Oregon, Texas is flying twice as much as Oregon. There's like a point differential thing to think about there, right? But
yep,
now this is like regular season stuff every week.
exactly. Wow. Yep, yep. All righty. So next on the topic. So we're gonna take our deeper dive into Texas at Ohio State. Um, and what can I
All right,
say?
let's do
What a
it.
way to start the season. Yeah. Um, first game of the day Saturday, right? It's a noon game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, you got two new quarterbacks, and it's gonna be a rematch from last year's semifinals.
Yep.
Arch Manning is Arch Manning, of course. And then Julian Sand, he was, a top quarterback in his recruiting class.
Yeah.
You have Texas's D line and Ohio State's wide receiver room. These are two rooms that you could say are the best in their respective categories.
Yeah.
And they will be on the field at the same time. So you're just
Yeah.
talking about a clash of titans.
That's going to be a lot of NFL, talent on the
Uh-huh.
field at the same time. Um, with obviously Ohio State just won the Natty last year. I mean, it's almost a coin flip, right? Who's going to win this game? It had me
Uh-huh.
thinking, when, and this is our trivia question of the day, by the way. When was the last time a defending national champion lost their first game of the season? I had to look up the answer. It didn't come off the top of my head, but Aaron, do you think you know who that could be?
Um, Come back to me at the end of the episode. I'm gonna
Okay.
write down what I think my answer is. I got a pretty good inkling, and if I have it right, I'll hold up my
Okay.
paper. Yeah. So,
Okay, so Aaron's writing down his answer. We'll put it up at the end of the episode. And if you're listening, just stay tuned till the end, and we'll cover that. Um, so yeah, as he's writing that down, in episode one, we said, not to overreact to this game. Both of these teams are stacked. We have to get used to a world where a national champion moving forward can have multiple losses. We just saw it last year. Both of these teams will still be in play, for their respective conference championships. Um, so it's not the end of the world to whichever team loses this game. Somebody has to lose. And yet you still get bragging rights. One team will have bragging rights to say, hey, we won the biggest opener probably in college football history. And that might add a little swagger to that team, moving forward. Or it can give them a big head and they can probably stumble and fail against a team they shouldn't lose to. But in any case, Aaron, got a question for you. With how stacked these teams are, I think it's going to come down to who wins in the trenches. These are two programs that are full of talent, and yet Texas is replacing four starters on their offensive line, including Kelvin Banks, first round draft pick. Ohio State is replacing their entire defensive line. Who is it? Who is the team to be concerned about in the trenches here? Who do you think wins that battle or loses that battle?
so game one, week one, I'm gonna have to go with the offensive line protecting their new starter for the year. That's gonna be the Texas Longhorns. They're going to be in a hostile environment facing a very pumped up and hyped up Ohio State team.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just very, very concerned about, who they have to be those guys and really step up to the plate immediately. They're playing somebody they could potentially play again in the national championship. So I'm more concerned about, Texas's offensive line.
Gotcha. So with that being said, then what does Arch need to do in order to be successful? Ohio State secondary will be very good.
Mhm.
Igbinosun, cornerback, he's a stud. He was great for them last year, and they also have the best safety in America, in Caleb Downs, back there, protecting his zone. So what does Arch need to do in order to be successful here?
Sure, sure. So the thing I think he needs to do is actually rely on his supporting staff a lot more and just, utilize the talent around him to not be the superstar of the game. Um, he's got a really good backfield and running back room. You know, he's got Wisner returning, who was the leading rusher last year. I believe he had four different 100-yard rushing games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you got C.J. Baxter. He's returning for his junior year, and he's due to be theoretically the star of the running back room.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming off a season-ending knee surgery last year, so I'm interested to see if he's going to be as powerful and explosive as he was before. Of course, their wide receiver room is always good. They have
Yeah.
Wingo. You know, he's a guy who has the potential to be a breakout star. They got Moore, and then they got, you know, their true freshman, Jamie French.
Mm-hmm.
He was highly recruited, and he's already getting reps and could impact their team in his first year.
For sure.
Um,
Might have
big,
to up there.
yeah, exactly. And then big shoes to fill. Can the tight end Jack Indries Jr. can he replace Helm, the tight end from last year for
Gunnar
Texas,
Helm.
right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Gunnar Helm, right? He's a transfer from Cal, and he's expected to step up and take on this big role. So I'm really interested to see what these guys are going to do and how they're going to support Arch. But in game one, you know, a guy who's taken less than 100 snaps with the offense and the real action and real speed, he needs to rely on his stars around him.
Yeah, those are
Mm-hmm.
definitely good stars and good names to know. Let's flip the script a little bit. Julian Sand, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he was supposed to be the next king of Tuscaloosa, but after Nick Saban left, he said maybe I need to take my talents north. But you know, for him, this will be essentially his first time starting as well as Arch. How can Julian Sand attack Texas? Their defense, I think, is ranked number 2. Their defensive line is the pride of their team. Ohio State's offensive line returns some talent, but I think both of their tackles are new. So what does, I'll pick a name, Jeremiah Smith, probably one of the best players on the team. What
Mm-hmm.
does Jeremiah Smith, for example, need to do in order to help Julian Sayin out?
Sure, sure. So I think, you know, Ohio State, they need to, you know, balance and distribute the ball really, really well. But I think what people like, you know, Jeremiah Smith need to do is keep that defense honest. So whenever it's time to make a big play or expose somebody who's cheating and trying to stop the run or, you know, help out in zone coverage more, expose them, right? He has to be the star and the stud he's been, you know, since he's come onto the scene of college football. So I'm really excited to see him, you know, play this season. Maybe he's a Heisman hopeful this year, but he has to really do a lot to pull the defense's attention towards him, right?
So,
Alrighty.
all right. So that sounds good. Do we want to get into our picks then for who we think will win this weekend?
Sure, sure. So yeah, I'll go with my pick first. Week one coming into the shoe, the Buckeyes, they're coming off a national championship. So I think the team and the fan base is going to come in with a lot of energy. Um, both teams have quarterbacks with, you know, no big time game experience. Texas, however, is entering year 2 of the SEC, right? So they've had a lot of different pressured games competing in a very stacked league like the SEC. Um, I think they'll have a lot more composure just because of how much they lost in close games last year. You know, a loss sometimes it can be a lesson. I feel like they learned a lot of lessons last year with those close losses to, you know, Georgia and this very much same Ohio State team in the semi playoffs last year, right? Um, it'll be a dogfight, but I think the pissed off Longhorns are going to come
Hmm.
out and they're going to win by 10 on the road.
That is a good way to think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if you're right. I went the other way. I think it will be a tight game. I just don't think there are any glaring mismatches for these two teams, between these two teams. For that reason, I think Ohio State gets the win by 6 points, and it basically comes down to a couple of point differentials here and there. I think it'll be like a 27-21 type of game. I think there will be a 3 point differential just because they're the home team. They're going to be a loud crowd playing against a new Arch Manning being a new quarterback. And I'm going to give 3 points to Jeremiah Smith. I think that's how much of a difference maker he is. So 3 plus 3, 6 points. I think that's kind of going to be the differential here. I think Texas will absolutely have the opportunity to win. They'll their destiny will be in their hands at near the end of the game. But
Mhm.
like I said, I think the inexperience for Arch will show its head a couple times throughout the game. So once again, I think Ohio State by 6 points to beat Texas in their home opener. So moving along after that, there was some news from the SEC office this week. They have decided to move on to 9 conference games.
Yep.
And I think that this is interesting timing, considering that the CFP just announced that they will be including, strength of schedule as another metric to look into. So, I mean, like I said, it's interesting. I don't know if the chicken came before the egg, but
Mhm.
to me, it sounds like the SEC was waiting for the CFP to say, okay, fine, we'll honor, a harder strength of schedule before the SEC would, said, okay, fine, we'll add that ninth conference game. Obviously, the SEC stands to make more money from Georgia playing South Carolina versus South Carolina playing, Valdosta or something, or Georgia playing Savannah State or something like that, right? So there's obviously more money
Mhm.
to be made there. I can see why the SEC wouldn't want to go to 9 games unless certain things were guaranteed in terms of the postseason. As far as I know, the reports that I read, it will be a 3 permanent rival plus 6 rotating opponent each year type of situation. Very close to what was going on, previously anyway. I'll just say for Georgia's perspective, their 3 permanent rivals were Florida, Auburn, and Kentucky. Um, is that going to be the same moving forward? Who knows? I don't think that's set in stone yet, but it will mean that each SEC team will play every team in the conference every other year, and each team will visit every stadium every 4 years. So it's
Mhm.
quite famous. It's a quite famous story if you pay attention to college football, kind of like history. But Georgia, like Texas A&M, joined the SEC. I think my sophomore year of college in 2012. Georgia still has not gone to College Station to play Texas A&M in their stadium. I think that's the only instance of what team has not played somewhere else, but like that won't be a thing moving forward. Right? So yeah, that's kind of that. Aaron, any thoughts on 9 conference games versus 8?
Sure, sure. So yeah, as a Bulldog fan, the first thing that comes to mind when I hear this is, I'm kind of holding my breath. I understand that in the SEC, any conference game is an earned win, right? And so now we're just getting to a more and more tougher strength of schedule, right? And so I'm really concerned about teams in the SEC, and will we ever see another undefeated SEC team again if we move to
Mm-hmm.
this new format?
Yeah, I think the undefeated champion, the famed 15-0. I think that'll be a thing of a bygone era. Um, Congrats on Michigan maybe being the last group to achieve that, even though they cheated their way to get there. Whatever. Um, but my thing is like, when does this stop? Like, when does this stop in terms of like all these conferences kind of like meddling with it's almost like they're playing a game within the game.
Hmm.
So like the Big Ten, they've been loudly complaining about the SEC's 8 game league schedule for years now. Um, and now, the SEC gets the ninth game, but they also said, oh, but you also have to play, the SEC now also has to play an extra quality opponent in the Power Four. So I don't know what that means. Like Georgia plays Georgia Tech, Florida plays Florida State. I don't know what happens to those games because that technically fits that criteria. But like as far as I know, the Big Ten doesn't do that. The ACC doesn't do that. So like when does this like gamesmanship between the leagues stop? And it's like games used to be played on the field, but now it feels like it's being played in offices with these executives for on the football side, executives on the TV rights side, and they're
Hmm.
playing a game that then the football team, the football coaches, and the fans then have to like adapt their fanhood around. And so, um, I don't know. Everyone complains about what happened to the game we used to love, but to me, it's these leagues that are causing a lot of these issues, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's a really good take. I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah.
All righty. So
What do we
next
got
on the
next? Yeah.
we have the SEC breakdown of odds to win the SEC championship.
Okay.
Um, so first things first, I see the top of the list. We got Texas. That's
That's
obvious.
fair. Yeah, that's fair.
They have them ranked at the number one preseason polls.
And by the
You
way,
know
we're
they
getting these from like Yahoo or something like that. We're not big betters. But we know what sells, right? So we talk
exactly.
about odds here, but I think these are from Yahoo Sports.
Exactly. So it says, they're plus 270. So you put down $100 and you could potentially win 270 if they win the conference championship. So,
Hmm.
Mash, we're looking at this list. In your opinion, who has the best value? If you were a betting man, and tell me,
Yeah.
in your opinion, what best value means.
So to me, best value would be like if if these two teams have similar odds, not odds like that are given to us by Vegas, but like in your mind, like in my mind, Texas, Georgia, yeah, they probably have a similar odds percentage wise to win the SEC championship, but the odds that you are getting from Vegas are different. And
Hmm.
so in this list, we have, I'll give you the top five here: Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. After Texas A&M is Ole Miss and downwards. I honestly don't think it's reasonable to believe that they will win the SEC. But within these top five, you have Texas at 270 plus 270, Georgia at plus 330, Alabama at plus 380, LSU at plus 700, Texas A&M at plus 1500. In my opinion, the best value on this list is somewhere between Alabama or LSU. These are the best values. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that Alabama or LSU have a very similar percentage chance to win the SEC as Texas or
Hmm.
Georgia, but their odds are so much better. Plus 380, plus 700 for Alabama and LSU versus Texas and Georgia's plus 270 and plus 330. So in my opinion, the best value, Alabama or LSU.
Okay. Okay. I can pretty much agree with you there with Alabama and LSU being, those best value teams. But I will say South Carolina at plus 2,500, those are really, really interesting
Yeah, that's a
odds.
good flyer to take for sure.
Yeah. You can put down $100 and you can, you know,
That's a nice lunch. That's a
nice
nice,
lunch. Yeah.
yeah.
Nice steak dinner right there.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Who are your
All
best
righty.
value picks?
My best values would have to be, again, that LSU game right there with, the plus 700 odds. Those are pretty good. Um, And I also had Georgia on the list.
Okay.
That's just me being a little biased, but
Yeah.
think those are pretty decent odds, and I almost have them for certain. Making the conference game.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
So let's start wrapping things up here. I do want to revisit that trivia question.
Mhm.
If you're still trying to figure it out at home, I will say we have mentioned the team. The team that's going to be the answer to the question, we have mentioned the team. All right. So Aaron, I don't know what you wrote down, so maybe that'll help you out. But the question was, who was the last national champion to lose their week one game of the following season? So Aaron, what do you got there?
So I don't know if you guys can see it on the screen, but I
Yep.
got
All right. So he's got 2019
2019.
LSU. That is the answer. LSU won the Natty in 2019. Joe Burrow and all those guys. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, COVID hit, so maybe it's an asterisk, but they lost their first game against Mississippi State in 2020. So,
Oh
will
wow.
that happen again this year? Ohio State, maybe, maybe not. We'll see.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's pretty much everything for this episode. Aaron, do you want to take us to the end here?
Sure. Yeah. So in next episode, some of the things we'll cover. So we're gonna preview all of the exciting games during week one. We're going to take a deeper dive into LSU at Clemson. We're also going to talk about some of the transfer portal additions and, some of the big impacts that some of those transfer portal guys could have this season. And then we're also going to talk about our underdog of the week. So please be on the lookout for that episode. Coming soon. It's probably going to drop Thursday.
Sounds good. And once again, like and subscribe. Follow us on all the other channels. Thank you very much, and see you next time. This has been another episode of First and Short.